One important thing that women should think about when planning travel is considering giving themselves permission to rest and pause, and seeing travel as a therapeutic tool for that restoration.
Hello, everyone. I'm Pamela Brewer, welcoming you to this edition of M.E.S.H. M.E.S.H is the place where your mental, emotional, and social health is always on the agenda. And today, our agenda is taking us to travel. We are joined by Dr. Lisa Pittman, who is a licensed clinical psychologist, a former athlete, a global citizen, an author, and a travel coach. Dr. Pittman, you're so busy. I don't know how you had time to show up today, but I'm glad you're here. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Dr. Brewer.
Now, you just heard me describe you as having a clinical practice and a coaching practice. What's the difference?
So the difference is in my clinical practice, I focus on helping people work through issues that are creating impairments in their functioning. And so it's truly a focus on what's not going well and how do we get them to a place where they are functioning more effectively. In a coaching practice, it's more helping continue to promote wellness that people may already be experiencing. And so it's a focus on pushing forward and being able to continue to enhance that well-being and not focusing on anything that is more clinical in nature.
Well, you know, it's interesting because you're couching travel within the frame of self-care.
Correct.
And I don't think people tend to necessarily see travel in that way. Even if they're going on vacation, you know, a lot of times people come back and they're like, need a vacation from their vacation. So
True.
Tell me what your sense is of self-care, self-healing, and travel. What does that look like?
So self-care truly is having an understanding of knowing what is in your best interest and being able to engage in activities and have experiences that allow you to continue to enhance that sense of self. So self-care, well-being, and similar concepts are truly about being able to look inward and figuring out what works best for you, and then being able to find ways to continue to enhance that. So when it comes to travel, as a travel coach, my focus is on intentional travel. So it's not just going on vacation for the sake of going on vacation or going on a trip for the sake of going on a trip. It's about knowing what you need in order to feel enhanced. Usually people want to feel grounded, enhanced, refreshed, and reconnect with self. And so that's what travel can do for self-care, is identifying exactly what kinds of experiences you want to have, and within that, which destinations can give you that experience, and then creating an itinerary of sorts that would allow you to then come back and feel refreshed and grounded.
So for those folks who say, the kind of vacation I want is one where I'm not dealing with the kids or my job, is that enough, or do you need more specificity?
I usually go a little deeper. So that's a good place to start. And typically what I will say is, well, what is it about wanting to be away from the kids, being away from the job that you're needing? And how will you know, what will success look like? How will you know that you've accomplished that objective? So are you truly just looking for getting space, or are you looking for digging into what will help fill your cup? Because a lot of times, especially Black professional women, which is the target audience that I work with, Black professional women spend so much time pouring into others, and that would be pouring into family, pouring into jobs. And it's something that we just do sometimes without even considering it. And so then it becomes necessary to identify, okay, so if you're not pouring into them, what does it mean to pour into yourself? And that's where I start the conversation.
I would suggest that in today's world, things are different from the way they used to be perhaps a few years back. Have you seen a change in how people travel?
Yes, I would say, first of all, it's important to know that people are still traveling. I think there's a lot of misconception about whether or not that's happening. As far as what it looks like now, it's definitely, I think, just naturally a little bit more intentional because of all the conflict and tension that is going on, not just in the world as a whole, but in our country in particular. And so when people are making decisions to travel, they are being very, very intentional about where they're going, when they're going, with whom they're going, and then how to make sure that they enhance their own sense of safety while they're gone. So it is still happening, but it's happening in on a way that I would like to think is actually very encouraging to know that they're being more intentional about that experience.
I was about to say, it actually sounds like a good, I mean, the stress is not a good thing, but it is a good thing that people are really paying more attention to what it is that they would like to achieve during their travel.
Correct.
Do you focus on professional Black women? Are there other populations you work with as well?
I do, yes. I have a wide variety of experiences working with different generations of people, different cultures of people. I've lived overseas, so I'm very comfortable. As you said earlier, I've been a global citizen and still consider myself to be so. So I can work with mostly adults. I mean, coaching is typically for adults, so I can work with any adult, any gender, any race, any culture. So yes, I feel very comfortable with that.
Is there a way to go on vacation and take your young children with you and it still be vacation?
Absolutely, yes. I've had that experience myself. I have a niece and nephew, and I've traveled with my sister and her family, and my sister and her husband are able to very easily have a vacation while they're still parenting. I mean, that's something that can happen. I think for other individuals who want to travel with their kids, I know of other people who part of their intentionality is to either travel with multi-generations so that there are others, so that the younger kids can have, or the younger part of that generation can interact with each other, while the older part of the generation can also have their own intentionality. And I also know of people who, when they travel, they want to make sure there's a kids club or some other kind of entertainment for their children where they can be safe in that travel. So there are ways to do that. Yes, it's really just about how you define intentional and how you define success at the end of that trip.
So what's going to make me, I mean, it used to be that, people would go to a travel agent and travel agent would plan everything out. And I hardly ever hear about travel agents anymore today. So what's going to make me come to you for assistance rather than going online, looking for a flight, looking for, I don't know, a reservation? Why am I coming to you?
Yeah, that's a great question and a very important question because it lends itself to helping people understand what a travel coach does. So a travel coach is not a travel advisor or a travel agent, as they used to be called. So I don't book the travel, but my intention and what my objective is to help individuals identify what they want to get out of their trip. How do you want to feel during the trip? How do you want to feel after the trip? How can you incorporate that feeling of, going back to my example earlier, feeling refreshed or grounded? How can you incorporate that into a longer lasting effect when you get back, so that you're not immediately burnt out again, going back into the work world or going back into family life. So it's really, so people would come to me to be able to make sure that whatever time they're going to take, that they're going to use to invest in themselves, to be able to take this time away from work and everything else, can feel like they are maximizing that time and feel good at the end of it about what they've learned about themselves and how they will implement that. And then I can help them with the part about figuring out how to make that happen. So I can give them websites to use to book their own travel. I can recommend travel advisors that they can work with. There are some travel advisors who do some of what I do as well, and there's some who are also travel coaches. So I don't want to confuse people as it relates to that, but the reality is the difference is that the travel advisors mostly focus on booking the travel, whereas the travel coach makes sure that you're enhancing your experience on that trip.
So are travel coaches, is that more common nowadays than before? I'd actually never heard of a travel coach, which doesn't mean anything except that I never heard of one. But
Okay.
Is that the current thing, if you will? Are people routinely turning to travel coaches for assistance so that they can be more intentional with their travel?
Travel coaching is becoming more known, but it's still relatively unknown. When I talk to people about what I do as a travel coach, I would say I have not met anybody yet who has heard of that before. So it's still relatively new, but it's definitely growing. I'm part of the Travel Coach Network, for example, and every day, every week, every month, we're getting information about how many people are becoming interested in it. So I would say it's not necessarily the it thing yet, but it's definitely growing in that direction. And truly, it's a matter of educating people about what it is and why it's important for individuals to use one.
Well, and you're saying that it's not the it thing yet, but it kind of sounds like it's, and I'm thinking of the way our finances are going nowadays. It sounds like this is a really reasonable investment in making the best of your travel investment by going to a travel coach. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think the key there is investment. A lot of
Okay.
people will look at where we are in society right now, and there are a lot of industries that are feeling relatively unstable.
Mhm.
And so people are being intentional about how they're spending their money and how they're spending their time. And if you look at it as an expense, it might feel like it's this frivolous, maybe nice to have expense, but not necessarily something they need to have. Whereas an investment
Yeah.
reflects that it is something that is important, it's something that you need to have. Now, we have to be realistic. I mean, if you really can't take the time and the resources to invest in something like this, then you have to be realistic about at what point you might be able to do that. But for those who are able to, instead of spending money on certain things, they shift that money and are willing to invest it in travel, and they would like to make sure that they're maximizing that time. This is a way to look at it as an investment and not necessarily as an expense.
Dr. Pittman, I'm going to take a break just for a second
Sure.
and just talk to the M.E.S.H audience, because
Sure.
folks, by now, my guess is that you're hearing something that you've not heard about before. I did not know about travel coaches, certainly. And that's really one of the goals of M.E.S.H, is to bring you information that really broadens your perspective, gives you things to think about, perhaps in a different way. I am asking you to go to the M.E.S.H channel on YouTube. Follow me on YouTube, subscribe on YouTube, follow me on Facebook. We're all over the place. So do take a moment at the end of our conversation and connect with me so that you can learn more about what we're doing every week. Let me go back to Dr. Pittman. Dr. Pittman, is there a protocol? If I call you for coaching, am I going to be talking to you for 6 months, for a week? How do I know when it's time to come to you?
That's a really important question, and I'm glad that you've asked that. I always start my interactions with individuals with what we call a discovery call. So it's about 15 minutes roughly to really get a sense of what a person is looking for and to determine if it's the right fit. Am I the right person to work with you? And can we move towards an objective, identify an objective and move towards a satisfactory outcome, and not just satisfactory, like an ideal outcome for that person. And then we discuss whether or not, based on what the needs are, if it would be most appropriate to do a session by session as needed kind of interaction, or if you would benefit from a package. And typically what the package would be a certain amount of investment of time and money. So the investment in the time would be over a course of about 3 months,
Okay.
identifying how many sessions, and I can break it down more, but essentially it's a 3-month package. And then with one-to-one sessions, but then also email support and other supports in that period of time, and then reevaluating if there needs to be an additional amount of time added to that. So it's a conversation that we have, and it's important to make sure, like I said, that the fit is there and that the person is ready to commit and invest in themselves. It's about investing in themselves.
It really sounds like a comprehensive approach to, again, investing in yourself by investing in your travel in a way that you're
Right.
going to achieve the outcome that you're really looking for. Because as I said
Right.
earlier, so many people come back from vacation and they're exhausted. They don't want to go back to work because they
Right.
don't feel like they've had a vacation yet.
Right.
What about people traveling alone? What about women traveling alone? Is that happening more? Is it less? Are there concerns?
Yeah, women traveling alone continues to be a growing part of the travel population. If you look on Instagram, if you look on all the other social medias, you will see lots of people who are promoting trips for solo travelers. And it is something that continues to happen in spite of the fact that some people might feel it is unsafe to travel solo. I traveled, when I lived in Singapore, I only traveled by myself, and I traveled all around Asia and other places. And I have a pretty high travel IQ, which means, and I coined that term essentially, and that essentially means that I feel very confident in my skills, and I'm able to address and deal with many things that come up in a way that would still allows me to have a successful trip. And so other solo travelers, when I work with solo travelers, that's what I try to do, is help them make sure that they have the skills that they need and they can rely on their strengths to enhance their ability to manage anything that comes their way. Is it safe? Well, safety is relative, I guess. I mean, everybody has to have an understanding of their own threshold for safety. And part of what I do as a coach, a travel coach, is helping them recognize, where's your threshold for this? How do we make sure we put safeguards in place for you, including making sure where you're staying is safe, making sure that any tours that you're taking, that you have access to the tour guides and so on. And then also identifying resources in country and outside of country to be able to help support them if they are starting to feel unsafe. So it truly is about the extent to which a person is willing to be a little uncomfortable, but also comfortable enough in themselves to be able to make decisions that are in their best interest.
So I've seen, there's solo travel where you're literally traveling alone, but then I've also seen solo travel in groups. Mm-hmm. What's your thought about that?
I really like the idea of an opportunity for people, especially going to certain areas of the world, certain countries, to be able to have the safety of numbers by going, so they can travel, they can have aspects of what they're doing that are by themselves, but they can have connections with other people if they need it. No solo group travel is the same. So it's really important for those who are interested in that to do good research about the person who's running the travel group, and to know for themselves what they still need to do on their own, even if they're a part of another group. So I really think it's a great concept. It's actually something that I'm considering doing on my own as well, to help with people who are introverts who like to travel, who might have different needs in those group travel experiences. But yeah, it's absolutely something that I think is very valuable.
The idea of an introvert traveling alone, on the one hand, introverts kind of like to be with themselves, so they want to travel alone. That makes sense. But on the other hand, you can be an introvert, you can be in a group, doesn't mean you're, attached at the hip to the group, and you can still feel safe and explore and be curious.
Right.
One more question before I ask you to give us some details about how to be in touch. Sure. If I'm going to a foreign language, foreign country, do I need to learn the language?
No. Nowadays we have Google Translate, right? So people use that quite often. I've been in places where pre-Google Translate, where I've been able to communicate my needs. And that's part of the safety in travel, and part of the being intentional about travel is knowing what your threshold is for being in a place, because that can be really uncomfortable. So finding lodging where they speak English or speak whatever your native language is, and being able to find other opportunities to make sure that you can be heard. So for example, when I was in Asia, I went to Korea and Japan, and those are the two places in the world where I needed to use picture menus, for example. So being able to figure out how to pivot, I guess, for lack of a better word, so that you can still get your needs met, even when you're in a foreign country. So no, you absolutely do not need to know the language.
So that's really important to know, because a lot of people will say, well, I'd love to go X, but I have no idea what the language is. And, when I think about like Russia, or when I think about Korea or Japan, I'm thinking, wow, I'm having a hard time with English. How am I going to do that one? Right. But you're saying it's very doable.
It is. And the reality is a lot of countries, especially ones that are very much geared towards tourism, there will be English signs, or there will be people who do speak English in the hotels and things like that. I always encourage people, when they go to places they've never been before, to book at least one city tour when they get started. And that's usually done in your whatever your native language is. And so that can be another really great way to be introduced to a city.
So that's an interesting idea, which I didn't know about, because I'm not a travel coach, but that if you go on a tour, at least if you go on one tour, it's likely to be in your language. Mm-hmm. You're learning as you're getting your curiosity needs met as well.
Absolutely. And if you can do a city tour that has food involved, that's even better, because then you can learn about the restaurants, and they can tell you more about how to access part of that culture. Again, that's part of intentional travel, is what do you want to get out of the experience? When I travel, I always want to try the food, and I always want to, there are other things I would like to experience. So those are ways to do that.
So how do people get in touch with you to learn more about your travel coach practice?
Sure. So there's several different ways that I can be reached. You can see on the screen how I spelled the Travel Doctor. So the name of my coaching practice is the Travel Doctor LLC. So you can type in the Travel Doctor LLC altogether .com for my website, and there's more information about me and my services on the website. I also, when I travel, and I've traveled to 114 countries at this point, I have lots of pictures. So I have an Instagram account, and I do post pictures on Instagram, and I try to do other more educational kinds of travel things with the pictures as well. So my Instagram is at the Travel Doctor. So that's where you can find me on Instagram, and then on LinkedIn under Dr. Lisa Pittman.
So I'm going to ask you, for those who are listening via podcast and not seeing you, how do you spell the Travel Doctor?
Sure. It's the THE and then TRAVELDOCTA. So Travel Doctor. And it's pushed together typically, but when you're going onto the website, it's all together anyway. So yes, Travel Doctor. Right. So it's A, not OR at the end.
Okay. All right. That's an important distinction.
It is.
Actually, I've learned a lot about even thinking about travel, things that I hadn't ever really thought about before. So thank you very much for joining us today here at M.E.S.H. And I think I'm now feeling encouraged to go take a trip someplace.
Great. Well, I certainly hope you do. And I appreciate the opportunity. And I welcome, if anybody felt connected to anything that I said today, I welcome you to reach out to me. And I look forward to talking with you.
All righty. Again, thank you so much for joining us today here on M.E.S.H. And folks, I want to thank you too for joining me here today on this edition of M.E.S.H. I encourage you to take a listen to M.E.S.H. at Facebook. Ask you to follow me on Facebook, subscribe on YouTube, the M.E.S.H. YouTube channel. I'm on LinkedIn, lots of places where you can find out more about M.E.S.H. And remember, I'm here every week with another conversation. So you make sure that you tune in and join me. Thank you so much again. You take care. Have a great week. See you soon.